book I have coming out comes out of not the research I've done here, but research that I did as part of my PhD. But it's very connected to a lot of the stuff that we're doing here around housing and homelessness, so it's been a really interesting fit. But the book itself is looking at Los Angeles, and it comes out of a lot of years of some of my previous work in LA around housing and working with tenants around housing issues. So it sort of looked at taking a step back and sort of figuring out some of the deeper structural things that were happening that made our lives as working around slum housing and trying to improve slum housing conditions so difficult. And so the main question I started with for the book was just trying to understand why LA was more segregated in the years that I was working there than it had been in the 60s, after constant struggle, after all of these civil rights struggles. So really what it does is it takes a historical look at the history of struggle against segregation in Los Angeles and the ways that that sort of looking at sort of the beginnings of how whites came to come to LA, and how some of the very deeply racist white supremacist ideas that they had then were built into this, were built into property values and the profession of real estate, into policy and practice, how all of that sort of grew up over time in ways that still impacts us today. So the main thesis of the book is basically that a lot of these ideas around the importance of having homogenous white neighborhoods and that being the most valuable kind of property are still deeply embedded in the logics of real estate today. And so when you look at issues around gentrification, around homelessness, that it's still a lot around those same racial logics that were at play sort of in, turn of the century or before. So that's why it's called City of Segregation, 100 years of struggle around housing in Los Angeles. But it's really trying to tackle a question that is a question for all cities in the U.S., because segregation is omnipresent and it's still a huge issue, and it's one that's not really, it's often seen as just sort of a side, marginal effect of development and property in a lot of urban studies works and academic works, and so it's really trying to figure out, to reset some of that balance and to really sort of argue that the racial question in the U.S. is really central to how cities have developed over time, and to the processes that we're seeing now, where you're seeing sort of the mass clearance of poor people and people of color from inner cities. So it's really thinking about where that history lies, what are the logics that are driving these processes, and thinking about how maybe we can stop them and build better cities for everyone.